Ladies and gentlemen, coming soon, a podcast you've all been waiting for. The movie podcast to end all movie podcasts. A podcast that discusses and critiques the best of the best and the worst of the worst movies playing at a theater near you. With a host whose opinions have been deemed as fact by your favorite fact checkers. And that's a fact. Without further ado, let me introduce you to the movie maestro, the tyrant of theater, the gumshoe of review, the man that makes theater employees and Hollywood execs shiver by his mere presence. Ladies and gentlemen, the judge, the jury, the sultan of cinema, Christan Henson. Welcome to the Movie Wire.
Welcome to this week's edition of The Movie Wire. I'm your host, Justin Henson, and welcome to the show. Now, the last couple of weeks have been a really tame set of releases, as it usually is beginning of each year. So in this episode of The Movie Wire, we have 3 brand new releases, with 1 playing now in theaters and 2 that are available on Netflix right now. But before I begin the show, I want to put out a congratulations to all the winners at Tuesday's Golden Globe Awards. This year has been a fantastic year at the movies. My biggest prediction on the show is that The Banshee of Inisherin would take home the most awards come awards time. And so far it is on track, winning the most Golden Globe Awards this year. I had 3 total hopes this year, and I got 2 out of the 3. And that was The Banshee of Inisherin taking home the most awards, Angela Bassett taking Best Actress, while my hope was for Brendan Fraser to win Best Actor for The Whale. That award went to Austin Butler for his role in Elvis, which wasn't a complete letdown. He would have been my second pick for Best Performance. Even though I wasn't a huge fan of the film, his performance was completely memorable and well-deserved. Now, with awards aside, we do have a great show this week. This week on The Movie Wire, Friendship has evolved into a learning AI toy. That's more than a toy, it's family, until she starts killing in the new thriller M3GAN. Christan Bale teams up with Edgar Allan Poe to solve a stream of murders in the new Netflix exclusive A Pale Blue Eye. And finally, 5 young boys that have to rely on each other and journey to start a new life on a land that was left to one of them in another Netflix exclusive, The Kings of the World. Ready for my verdict? Let's go.
Out of the windows to watch, a roar and a burst of flame. The Movie Wire podcast. We need people like me.
The Wire.
And here we go.
A robotics engineer at a toy company builds a lifelike doll that begins to take on a life of its own in the new thriller M3GAN.
I designed M3GAN to protect Katie from feeling lonely. She will recognize you as her primary user. And when you do that, you're going to pair with her.
Crazy. It's insane, right?
Oh, don't I look nice? Biting my eyes, isn't it pure perfection?
M3GAN, your goal is to protect Katie from harm, both physical and emotional.
1, 2, 3, 4. I declare some war. I won't let anything harm you. I love her.
M3GAN's not a person, Katie.
You don't get to say that.
Things that you can play with me, you better watch your back. The last thing that you hear would be my laugh.
M3GAN, what are you doing?
Couldn't sleep. Occupational hazard.
Got your full attention.
Don't! Stop!
What the hell is that?
You should probably run.
Unprovoked is all we will. Push you downhill. Bitter as much as we're sweet.
I won't let anything harm you ever again.
M3GAN,
Have I done something to upset you, Gemma?
I know you think you're maximizing your objective function.
Oh, really?
Sugar and spice and everything nice. No, that's not what we're made of.
M3GAN?
Baby doll skill. Don't provoke, cause all we will go.
You'd have to shut her down.
Jesus Christ, I thought we were friends.
Might be pretty, but we're still.
I have a new primary user now. Me. Did M3GAN do something bad?
What's going on? What are you?
I'm Megan.
Baby, don't provoke us or we will.
While watching M3GAN, I was reminded of a lot of elements from watching 1990s Child's Play 2. We have a single female guardian who, by the way, just so happens to work at a toy company. A greedy, slimy toy executive, David, played by Ronnie Chang, that reminded me of Greg German. For those of you that remember, he was also the toy executive that got strangled in his car in the beginning of Child's Play 2. And finally, a child that has a new living arrangement, a new guardian, and no real friends to speak of. Besides all the characters, the movie also shares an overall similarity to the shooting style, lighting tones, and the simplistic dialogue. I also bet if we had a sequel to the 2019's Child's Play remake, the plot and the style would have been close to this film. M3GAN stars Allison Williams as Gemma, who takes in her niece Katie, played by Violet McGraw, after losing her parents to a tragic accident. Gemma works at Funky, a technology advanced toy company in Seattle, which I find amusing since we have a well-known company, Funko, that is based in the Seattle area here. That, of course, is famous for its basic, popular, collectible plastic figures. Now, Gemma has spent company funds on a project that wasn't authorized by her company, on the most advanced toy the world has ever seen, and that is M3GAN, which stands for Model 3 Generative Android. M3GAN is a fully interactive learning AI human-looking toy. When Funky executive David discovers Gemma's work, she is forced to shut it down. But if she actually does that, we wouldn't have much of a movie, so you can read in between the lines of what happens next. M3GAN kicks off the movie on a bizarre commercial for Funky's hottest toy, Perpetual Pets, an interactive Furby-like toy with creepy human teeth that will remind you of the original Sonic the Hedgehog movie design. The commercial is purposely bizarre and eye-catching and got a few chuckles from the audience. Perpetual Pets is designed to be an interactive but mostly through your phone. While watching Katie play with one of these odd-looking things, her dad says, what's the point of actually playing with a toy if you have to look at a screen to play it? This is where screenwriter Akilah Cooper will give you the introduction of the message she will sneak into the movie subtly as we see our android mayhem. As a surprise, the movie addresses key point topics such as screen time and the way we as a social society see parents use technology and treat it as a toy, but forgetting the power some devices can have. And there are pressures parents feel more today than ever before with introducing tech into our kids' lives. And I have talked to a lot of parents that do find it overwhelming at times that they put tech into our kids' hands and just have to cross their fingers without a full understanding of what it is. Now, Gemma collects old toy collectibles, which is a clever comparison to the work that she is developing, which to a point can contrast the evolution of the way kids play, if you will. And there is a scene where Katie attempts to play with one of these old vintage toys and doesn't understand how to work it, and she just ends up rolling it like a ball. When it comes to toys each generation grows up with, there's a learning curve, whether that's adults learning new devices with their kids or kids learning old devices with their adults. But this clever commentary is so brief on its discovery that it's almost treated like a visual personality trait of our main characters, but never really deep dives into this except for the introduction. And I would have loved to see more discovery dialogue into this messaging, but it just kind of skips over it. Parents have a tricky balance and a grown responsibility that M3GAN showcases, and M3GAN is almost a symbol of the danger of technology being treated as toys. But by the end of the climax, there is no real summary or conclusion of this messaging. But I will give Cooper credit for trying to sneak in a topic into this kind of movie. Now, Cooper's previous works include 2018's Hellfest, 2021's Malignant, alongside a string of TV shows, including one of my favorites, Grimm. Now, honestly, I wasn't expecting a message at all when it comes to a movie like M3GAN, so Cooper gets brownie points for that. But her writing isn't without flaws, but partnered with the right cast and the right director to take this movie into the right direction, this is a film that works. Now, the writing is pretty predictable of what you would expect in a movie like this, and the audiences are not going to flood the theaters to get a thought-provoking film here. Audiences know exactly what kind of movie they're in store for when they buy a ticket like M3GAN, but they might be a little put off because it does only have a PG-13 rating, and it's almost like a toned-down version of a Child's Play film. But that doesn't ruin the experience that the movie offers. It doesn't necessarily offer the cool kill count, the shock kills, the build of suspense leading up to a murder, and it isn't scary. But where the movie lacks in this, it makes up for it with the curiosity of M3GAN and what she grows into, along with the interactions from Katie and even her creator Gemma. This is enough to keep the audience glued to the screen, and even more so, M3GAN is fully aware of what it wants to be. It knows it needs to separate itself from what audiences have seen numerous times before, but still be satisfying to those in need for some cool, over-animated and overdone robot kills. M3GAN is so subtly over the top without going into the absurd category, it walks a fine line without ever crossing it to make us roll our eyes in the back of our head. Even when we reach the climax, you'll know when you see it. And in our head, we really want to think, oh, come on. Our minds are thinking about it, but our lips are mouthing, that's pretty cool. This is where we can acknowledge that M3GAN has officially taken over our mental state and our cool factor. M3GAN was played by our young newcomer Amy Donald and voiced by voice talent Jenna Davis. Now M3GAN isn't necessarily a scary design, but it is an unsettling one. The design is almost that of what we would see from a porcelain doll from the early 1900s. Along with Amy Donald's movements and Jenna Davis's positive tone, the M3GAN character is comforting when it wants to be and unsettling when it requires to do so, but it never tries hard to be more scary than what it is. Now the plot is predictable, the characters have been transported from other movies that we have seen over 100 times, and the dialogue is so simplistic and lacks follow-through, but the cast and chemistry is there. Director Johnstone is clear on his vision of what he wanted this movie to be, and that is just to make a plain and simple silly movie about AI that goes rogue with a subline messaging about technology, screen time, and how we are becoming accustomed to being reliant in social society and using this as a parenting tool for entertainment and not just a tool. Now there's enough here to consider nods of films past, but to also stand alone as film present. I'm giving M3GAN 3 stars. Now, before we get into the rest of the show, make sure you check out my reviews on previous episodes for movies that are available to stream now. Now available. Wonderful surprises await you when you visit Ralph Fiennes' exclusive restaurant in The Menu, which served its way to 3 stars. Journey to a place where nothing is as it appears in Disney's Strange World that didn't journey too far at 2.5 stars. The sequel to 2019's murder mystery that brings the fun in another whodunit. The Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery which solved the mystery to bring it to a 3-star review. A pair of Navy U.S. fighter pilots risk their lives during the Korean War and become some of the Navy's most celebrated wingmen that received 2.5 stars. Say hola to his little friends in the sequel to the 2011 animated film Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, which wished itself to 3 stars. And finally, one of my favorite films of the year and now a Golden Globe winner of Best Picture, and is one that I still will predict will come out with the most Oscar nominations, is The Banshee of Inisherin, which received a perfect 4 stars. You can find those reviews on my previous episodes, and just a reminder, if you haven't yet, make sure you hit follow or subscribe and leave me a review on Apple Podcasts, and make sure to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Letterboxd at Movie Wire Show. Now, next week, I will be releasing a very special additional episode to share my favorite top 10 movies of the year. Some of these movies were no question, and some needed a couple to a few rewatches to make it onto the top 10. Those that have been listening to my show won't be too surprised by my top couple, but may be taken by surprise by the rest. Make sure you hit subscribe to be notified when that episode hits. Expect that early next week. Now, I want to talk about a podcast that has almost become a tradition weekly while I'm taking my lunch break, and that's the My Workplace podcast with J and K. These two amazing people have a way of really taking the edge off during a stressful day with their amazing chemistry and humor. If you haven't tuned in to the My Workplace podcast, the link will be in the description of this episode. Make sure you like and subscribe their show. Now let's hear from J and K now.
Is work getting you down? Or do you love your job but want to hear all about the other 98% of the population who don't? Then hop on over to your favorite podcast app and give the My Work Life podcast a listen.
Each week, J and K bring you a variety of workplace stories that will have you laughing even on your worst day. That's the My Work Life podcast.
A world-worried detective is hired to investigate the murder of a West Point cadet. Stymied by cadets' code of silence, he enlists one of their own to help unravel the case of a young man the world would come to know as Edgar Allan Poe. Exclusively playing on Netflix is The Pale Blue Eye.
Is it true? You once elicited a confession with nothing more than a piercing look.
With enough patience, the suspect will often interrogate himself.
Detective Landor, one of our cadets. Hanged himself last night.
That's a matter for the coroner.
I'm afraid that's not the end of it. His heart was carved from his chest.
What type of fella could do this?
It'd have to be
A bad man.
Need you to decipher this.
Rumor has it they're instructions for immortality.
Someone there?
Another cadet is missing.
Poe, I need you to discreetly infiltrate the cadets.
What is this?
Blood, symbols, rituals.
Oh, my lord.
This man will do most anything to cheat death.
Where are the facts? Where are the simple facts? The truth!
I believe the dead haunt us because we love them too little.
We're no closer to finding who's responsible for this than we were a month ago.
We are closer. It's only a matter of time.
Based on the book by Louis Bayard of the same name and adapted to screen and directed by Scott Cooper, with previous credits from 2009's critically acclaimed Crazy Hearts, Out of the Furnace, Hostiles, and Antlers. Here comes a new mystery film that, of course, straight out of fiction, even though Edgar Allan Poe was at West Point. Louis Bayard brings clever characters to his murder mystery story, but when it comes to Scott Cooper's adaptation, at times can feel a bit of a misplaced opportunity. The Pale Blue Eye stars Christan Bale as Augustus Landor, who recently was in the stinker of a film from last year, Amsterdam, and is hired to investigate a murder of a cadet at West Point, and secretly recruits a cadet from West Point, a young Edgar Allan Poe, played by the brilliant Harry Melling, who more recently played in 2021's Tragedy of Macbeth and 2022's Please Baby Please. Netflix now tackles a different kind of mystery opposite than the more recent Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery that was a fun, classic whodunit with interesting characters and energetic performances. The Pale Blue Eye isn't really a whodunit murder mystery with one of the most well-known figures of literature, but rather a character study with little to no information about our characters, nor anything really interesting for them to say. Bale conquers the screen with the most screen time, but he is the least interesting character in the film, where we spend a lot of our time with some very basic lines, but most of the time we are almost watching a corpse go from one shot to another, with Bale just wandering around the screen. Cooper builds no attachment to our investigator Augustus Landor, and at times can feel as almost a chore to watch him. Now, the first act of the movie, the supporting cast kind of suggests by conversations with Augustus that he is almost like a renegade and outlaw, or kind of more of a character that we are going to have some fun with later in the movie. But that's not the character we got. Now, where the real magic comes on screen is where we're introduced to Harry Melling as a young cadet Edgar Allan Poe, whose performance is at top form here. There's a curiosity about his performance and the wonderment of how they were going to utilize Poe in the progression of this story. And when we have Bale and Melling team up for this investigation, it starts off in the beginning of what would be the rest of their interactions, boring and dull. But I must say, Melling is interesting to watch, and his back must be sore after trying to carry this entire movie with his performance. Now, Poe has some engaging dialogue during his interactions with investigator Augustus, as he should, as he's being a young, inspiring poet. And as we get further in the film, you can tell that Bale and Melling start to get comfortable with their performances together, and Bale starts to loosen up with his delivery. And we do have a couple of good scenes of the two together having a couple drinks, getting to know one another, and it's one of the more memorable scenes of the movie. Now, as I said in my Glass Onion review, I love a good mystery. I will usually have a pen and paper ready to take notes and try and give my best guess. Now, The Pale Blue Eye is a mystery of a mystery on itself. We don't know what kind of movie it wants to be. A Pale Blue Eye goes down a list of characters, but we really don't get to discover any of them. There are no real big clues, only clues to the clues, and every time we have a murder, we see the same cinematic formula with each. Someone gets killed, someone informs Augustus there was a murder, characters act shocked and look at each other for a few minutes, with Augustus going into the next scene hoping a clue will end up on his lap. And I was hoping too, because the second half of the movie it was becoming very repetitive, and I was getting really bored with nothing to really engage the audience. It was like I was watching a dark remake of Groundhog's Day starring Edgar Allan Poe. Harry Melling's performance isn't the only great performance of the film. Toby Jones, who plays Dr. Daniel Marquise, who plays West Point's on-staff doctor, and helped with the autopsy of the murders on site. Jones was just in Empire Light for my review in December, and this is another example of a stellar performance, just in the wrong movie for him, to really make him shine. But his on-screen presence along with Harry Melling made it easier on the eyes and ears to sit through. Now, director Scott Cooper does a fantastic job building the environment and using some really good shots to really take in the environment and give us that mysterious cold winter's night feel, and the use of snow as a symbol of cold and seclusion in an active public area. The film does look great even with the use of blues and grays to really create that cold feel, but also really appreciate the beauty. As we get towards the last act, we get a sense of chaos of things that just happen to come together, where we have just sat and watched for over an hour and a half and the movie gives us a rush solve that doesn't really match the tone of the movie with the exception of a brief interaction from a character Jean Pepe, played by the unrecognizable Robert Duvall. That explains the importance of a certain book. The book actually plays a big part of the plot, and it's not really focused on other than a few mentions. And again, between Duvall's part and the rushed final act, everything just seems to be thrown in as director Cooper realized, crap, we spent all this time focusing on Bale's character, we have to get out and shoot the final act. The Pale Blue Eye is not only repetitive, but it is also unbalanced in the way it attempts to tell a story. Cooper forgets it has a character portraying Edgar Allan Poe to help solve a mystery, and when people read the synopsis on Netflix, this is honestly what will pique their interest other than having the star power of Christian Bale in the lead. And Cooper gets the focus wrong here. He banks too much on Bale to get people to tune in and forgets what an interesting story this actually could have been. That is, if he utilized the characters more than banking on the just pure star power. Utilizing the mystery around Poe and especially the setting, the mystery, and giving us something to really enjoy when it comes to the chemistry with Bale. A Pale Blue Eye should have been called The Mystery of Missed Opportunity, and it is saved by the stellar performances by Melling, Toby Jones, and a brief but honorable mention of Gillian Anderson as Mrs. Julia Marquis. It also succeeds in the chilling but beautiful setting and the brilliant costume design. But the movie is a slow burn that doesn't give the audience enough of a reward or a payoff for sitting through the over 2-hour runtime. I'm giving The Pale Blue Eye 2 stars. It gets so hard to keep track and even have time to read all the trending topics on the web. Now there's a new app to help with all of those problems. Newsly is an audio app for iOS and Android. It picks up web articles about the most trending topics on the web at any given moment and reads them to you in a natural human voice. For the first time in the history of the internet, the entire web becomes listenable. Browse articles from topics you choose and start playing. You can follow any topic as specific as you like, from sports, science, to Bitcoin. You can even follow Kardashian. It will find you the latest articles and read them to you out loud. And guess what? They have podcasts as well. Explore trending podcasts from over 50 countries. The Movie Wire is now a featured podcast on the Newsly app. Download and use Newsly for free now. The link will be in the description of this episode. You can also use one of my promo codes that you will find in the description as well to get you a 1-month free premium subscription. Stop scrolling, start listening, download Newsly today. 5 friends from the street of Medellín set out on a perilous journey through Colombia to recover a piece of land that was bequeathed to one of them in the kings of the world. Now let's hear from Laura Mora Ortega now.
After making my first feature, which is very autobiographical, I think I felt very free to talk about other things that really worried me and things that gave me that make me ask a lot of questions around the reality of the country that I come from, which is such turmoil. And so I started writing about these kids claiming a piece of land in a very freestyle kind of way. Like it just like started like a treatment and starting writing all these images that came to my mind about these kids doing like this road trip, claiming a piece of land, about what happens when you don't have anything and suddenly you receive a letter from the government saying that they are giving back a land that belonged to your parents, because in Colombia the land restitution is a big issue right now after the peace process. It's really funny. There are a lot of things in this film that happened because of the circumstances of the moment, especially after the pandemic, were really like gifts and things that became really special, that at a time were accidents and suddenly they became really special. I do have like a lot of, like, it was very clear to me that this film was gonna, the whole journey was be a ride between the realistic images and the oniric images, and the realistic images had to feel very truthful and kind of like a documentary filmmaking at a time, and then you have like this very like established shots and choreographies of all like the oniric bits.
Previously screened at multiple film festivals during 2022 and then released in Colombia last October with low attendance numbers, The Kings of the World was in danger of being lost among countless other films until Netflix acquires the rights to distribute in the US. Now it's available to stream on Netflix right now. The movie follows 5 friends, Ra, Calibro, Siri, Winnie, and Nano, played by Carlos Andreas Castaneda, Davison Flores, Ryan Acevedo, Christian Capana, and Christian David Duque, who all live on the streets of Medellín, who set out for a coming-of-age story and struggle to journey to live on the countryside to start a new life. The film takes us on a journey of friendship to one common goal: to start a better life. The bond between these 5 kids will certainly touch your heart even when they are at the age of causing trouble. The oldest of the group, Ra, who's 19, considers his friends family, since that's all he has left in the world. Now Ra strikes a bit of a break when his grandmother leaves him a spot of land. This will act as a new beginning for the 5 members of the family. This is a tale we have seen so often in the world, with the struggle of youth, the unfairness of life, not receiving fair justice, and when things seem to be at their highest hope, they seem to come crashing down right in front of our eyes. From the director of Killing Jesus comes her new, raw, heartfelt, heartbreaking coming-of-age story. The Kings of the World was also written by Ortega alongside Maria Camila Arias from Birds of Passage and Candelaria. It's a shame this didn't receive a bigger audience or more eager studios willing to pick it up, but now at least it will see the light of day now that it's available to stream in the US on Netflix. There is a certain power of emotion when we see children struggle no matter how tough they try to be as teenagers. The relation and experience of some of us adults knowing how hard it is dealing with emotion, and the most basic thing that goes wrong, and it's the end of the world. There are moments of pure overconfident strength that gets exercised as destructive mischief from our 5 friends, from chasing cows to destroying property. Then we see the gratefulness and kindness that the other adults see from their struggle of nowhere to go. But for every bad thing that happens, life gives them a win, as sometimes life does. But when the bad happens, it's amplified into a traumatic event for these boys, to the point where one of our boys gives a powerful line we never want to hear from a child, which is, "I don't want to live here anymore." In this case, one of the boys was talking about the world. This group of friends soon discover, as they escape from the streets and travel towards the countryside, there is a whole new set of challenges that their city connections and street smarts won't work. We are then introduced into almost a Lord of the Flies scenario amongst the boys, while we have to witness them relying on each other completely as they are out traveling towards the country without their connections of the city. Director Ortega proves her main forte here with building an environment and a chemistry between not just the characters, but interactions with other supporting characters. There is a sweetness to the character interactions that our 5 friends visit along their journey, and we see a light of goodness between the ugliness of the world. Ortega, alongside cinematographer David Gallego, these two know exactly how to create an environment and to capture some of the most captivating shots I have seen in a long time on film, to really demonstrate how big the world is to these boys, by utilizing a smart use of wide angle and distance shots, but not just to show us how great they are with the camera. It's almost always followed up with a clever follow-up shot that puts us into the environment with the characters. Writers Ortega and Arias are set up enough to create a vision and message to its viewer that some might not want to witness, especially showing the struggle of homeless youth. But there is a sense of mission from our two writers to ensure the honest look of our greed, way of life, unfairness of life and government, resentment, racism, sense of overcoming obstacles, and asking ourselves where is our breaking point of accepting what life should tell us before what we can be and overcome. Through a lot of the ugliness of this film, Ortega does a brilliant job of shining a light of hope, togetherness, and friendship, even times when it's hard to watch, especially when we have a group of 5 that have to face all these struggles together at all different ages and with all different outlooks on life. The Kings of the World is a fantastic social study, and I wish I could say character study, but this is where the film lacks a tad. At times it can focus too much on the situation rather than the relationship from our boys on how they handle that situation. I would have loved to see more candid, deeper conversations from our friends than worried about going to the next situations our boys will be in. The filmmakers tend to rush conversations to move on to the next obstacle, and this kind of hurts the messaging just a little bit, and this really holds the film back from true greatness. The Kings of the World is a film that will make you feel the way of life these boys are facing, and it is impossible not to wish for a gradual win at the end of the movie, even when they are acting their age. It is a beautiful film, even on the ugly surface. Whether it's successful or not on Netflix, I will applaud them for introducing this film on their streaming platform. Make sure to check it out. It's streaming now. I'm giving The Kings of the World 3 stars. And that's a cut on this week's edition of The Movie Wire. Again, thank you for listening and thank you for your support. You can also show support by following me on Instagram, Twitter, and Letterboxd at Movie Wire Show. And don't forget to leave me a review on Apple Podcast. Until next week, do me a favor, make sure you stay for after the credits to show the respect to those that put their blood, sweat, and tears into making a feature film. And don't forget to support your local movie theaters.
A verdict has been made on this episode of The Movie Wire by your host, Justin Henson. He thanks you for listening to the show. You can follow Justin on Instagram and Twitter at MovieWireShow or visit his website, www.themoviewire.com. Oh, and don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we will see you at the movies.
Thank you for bringing me to the movies.